All right, shalom, shalom. It's Brother Yatazadak, Hero Israel. I'd like to start off by giving all honor and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Kakwadash. Double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone. Today we're going to go into Genesis chapter 3, going into the Hebrew. So Lord willing, you're edified, and as always, giving all honor and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Kakwadash. Double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone. Let's get right into it. Genesis chapter 3, verse 1, and it reads, Genesis 3 and 1. And the serpent was more subtle than all of the living of the field, which had made the Lord of powers, and he said to the woman, also because has said God, thou shalt not eat of all of the trees of the garden. Wacha Nachash Chaya Iram Makal Chayath Hashada Ashar Aisha Yahweh Alahayim Waya Amar Al Ha Asha Ab Kaya Amar Alahayim La'a Tha Akalwa Makal Aitaza Hagan. Right, the word Iram means to be subtle, right? So the serpent said unto the woman, right? The serpent was testing the woman, right? And the serpent was not a serpent, it was a man, right? It was, right, the seed of the wicked, right? Because the trees in the garden, right, represented, right, the other nations that were in the garden, right? You had various nations, right? You have three classifications, like the elders apostles say. You have the sons of men, right, which are the other nations. You have the sons of the power, right, which are the righteous. And then you have the sons of the wicked, right, which ultimately it is the children of Esau, right? You have Cain, which are the Proto-Edomites, right? And the other nations, right? Which were in the garden, right? Not, right? Doesn't say what nation was there. Doesn't say Cain, Salakia. Doesn't say Ham was there, Japheth. That's not what it's talking about, right? Because every third and fourth generation you have, right, the Lord renews the spirits back on the earth, right? So it doesn't say, we can't speculate, right? There was just, right, the Lord created what? Man and woman, right? Adam, right, and Eve, right? Which really was Adam, right? Adam represents mankind, right? Let's get that real quick, actually. This is the book of Genesis, chapter 1 and 27. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Male and female created he them. Right? That word for man is Adam. Right? Male and female. Right? Let's get that in Genesis 1:21. Right? Right, so it says, right, the Lord created man, right, male and female, right, created he them, right? So man represents what? Adam, right? Which means from the ground, right? The Lord made, right? Male and female, right? Genders, mankind, right? So the beast of the field is what? These other nations, right? Scriptures say what? That man that is not in understanding is like the beast that perish. That is in the book of Psalms, right? You can look it up. I'm not going to go into it, right? Then you have the serpent, right? The serpent was always there, right? Which was a bloodline, right? Cain, Esau, right? The wicked, right? So that word Nachash means serpent, right? It also means diviner. It also means to observe omens, right? The word Ap meaning also, right? So the serpent said, right? Did God say that you shall not eat of any tree of the garden, right? That's how the serpent works, right? He tries you, he tests you, right? The Lord created a man, right? And put wickedness in him, right? And that's through what? Through the angels, right? The angels work in the unseen world, right? It's not talking about we're running around here, okay, I'm an angel, right? That's just philosophy, right? There are angels in the spirit world working and doing the will of the Lord, right? Now we are angels in the earth, right? We're angels trapped in human bodies, talking about the nation of Israel, right? Because, right, we were cast down from our former glory, right? The sons of God, which are called the Nephilim, right? Which are called men of renown, right? Which are the first fruits, right? So the Lord has what? Spirits, right? Working in the unseen world to do his will, right? There's no such thing as an angel and a devil angel. That's nonsense, right? You have angels in the unseen world, right? Shaitan, it just means adversary, right? So we as a nation of Israel, right? We are a nation in exile, right? It says in the book of Jude that the angels being placed in chains of darkness. That goes with this chapter, right? Because Adam and Eve went off, right? The last verse in the previous chapter says that they were naked, they had no covering, right? And they had no shame. Why? Because the Lord created men upright, but they have sought out many devices, right? It's talking about what? That they were walking upright, right? They were walking according to the way God created them, right? But then Most High God put the spirit in Adam to go off, right? And that's what he did, right? Genesis chapter 3, verse 2. And said the woman unto the serpent, of the fruits of the tree of the garden shall be eaten. Watha amar ha-asha al-ha-nachash maparia itaza hagan na-akal. Right? Genesis chapter 3, verse 3. And of the fruits of the tree which are in the midst of the garden, said the powers, thou shalt not eat of it, and thou shalt not touch it, touch upon it, lest you go a dying, right? Moparia, Ha, Aitaza, Ashar, Batawak, Hagan, Amar, Alahayim, La'a, Tha'akalwa, Manawa, Wala'a, Thagaiwa, Bawa, Pan, Tamathwan, right? So like I said, you have angels, right, working in the unseen world, right? You have the seed of the righteous, right? And ultimately all the nation of Israel, right, were created upright, right? But the Lord made go off, right, 2/3 of our people, right? He has preserved, right, like it says in the beginning, you have the first fruits, which were all righteous, right? Um, they weren't programmed, right, to ever go off, right? If you can understand what I'm saying, right? So you may have, many contentions like who is Satan, right? That's neither here nor there, right? Or who was the first spirit of Satan, right? Satan just means adversary, right? There's a host in the heavens, right, that does the Lord's will, right? And those that are in the earth, right, which are the nation of Israel, right? Because we are the angels, right? In human bodies. We've been made to go off just like Adam went off, right? 2/3 of our people went off, right? Um, so yeah, right? We were all right, ultimately, right, made to go off to an extent, right, to a certain time, right? But throughout time, right, the Lord preserved some of the righteous, right? Adam, Abraham, Noah, right? The Lord has always preserved the righteous, right? Either way. But we all had to fall just like Adam, right? But still, right? Does when it says to go off and the Lord preserves, right? The Lord preserves, right? Um, even those that go off, right? That's talking about the elect, right? So ultimately, right, because the prophecy says that we would lose our heritage, right? We lost our heritage, but that doesn't mean, right, we went the remnant were always off, because we always had, right, we always strived to be perfect. We always strived, right, because we had a righteous spirit in us, right? And the Lord always preserved us. Daniel 9:24, right, in the siege, right? Revelation, the book of Revelations, right, when it speaks about the wars, right? The Lord said, put not on those that have the mark, my mark, right? Do not destroy them, right? So the Lord has always preserved, right, the righteous, right? The wicked, right, were went off, and they continued in that straight path, right? If you can understand, right? But the Lord this time is only going to bring back, right, the remnant, the elect, starting with 144,000, which are the first fruits, and then the great multitude, right? So just because you go off doesn't mean, right? Um, if you're sincere, right, that means you're not willingly going off, right? The Lord is preserving you, right, for a reason, just like He did with the remnant, right? Now, was Noah perfect? Right? He he did what was commanded. Abraham, right? Um, David, right? You have certain instances where they went off, like David, right? But the Lord preserved them. Why? Because it's about the Spirit. You see, this is what the Pharisees stumbled upon. They stumbled upon, right, the ways of righteousness, right, which was, right, the law, right, but they relied on the letter of the law. It was not by faith and, right, doing things according to the best of your ability, right? So the Lord, scriptures say, he tries the hearts, right? So that's what it's about, really, right? So Genesis chapter 3 and verse 3. So the serpent said unto Eve, right? Or Salakia, Eve said unto the serpent, right, of the fruits of the tree in the midst of the garden, we can eat of it, but not of the right? So the fruit of the tree in the midst of the garden, we will not eat of it, right? That's talking about philosophies, right? So there were other philosophies in that time, right? Because what? The law was established, what? To know good and evil, right? It doesn't say, right, okay, it's okay to follow this philosophy and this philosophy. No. It's saying you know the philosophy, just like you know the law, you know what's good and what's evil, what's acceptable and what's not, right? But the Lord said, do not eat of the fruit of the tree of life, right? Which represents what? The whole understanding, which is what we have now, right? Read about that in the book of Proverbs, right? The knowledge of the latter end of things, right? Because Ezra wanted to know what happened in the end. The prophets were given visions, right? But they weren't given the whole understanding, right? Which we have that now, right? Which is the volume of the book, right? The knowledge of good and evil, right? Represents Adam and Eve eating of that fruit, right? Knowing, right? They already knew good, right? Because the Lord made them upright. But then they ate of that tree, right? They knew evil, right? They went astray, right? So the Lord drove them out, right, from the garden, right? And then there was an oral law that was continued, right? But man still went off. This is Genesis chapter 3 and verse 4. And he said the serpent unto the woman, surely thou shalt not go a dying. Waya amar ha-nachash al ha-asha la'a mawath tamatwan. Because knows the powers, because in the day that you eat of it, and will be open your eyes, and you will be like the gods to know good and evil. Right? That represents Adam and Eve not going off. They were made not to go off in the beginning of creation. Right? Kaya yadai alahayim kaya bayawam akalam ma manawa wana pakwakwa ayan yakam wa haya yatham ka alahayim yadaya tawab wa raya. Genesis 3 and 6. And saw the woman because it was good, the tree for food, and because it was desirable, right, it is before the eyes, and precious the tree to give insight. And she took of its fruit and ate of it, and ate, and gave it even unto her husband with her, and he ate. Wata ra'a ha asha kaya tawab ha aitaza lama akol wa kaya tha'awa hawa la yanyam. Wana Hamad Ha Aitaza Laha Shakial Wa Thakwach Maparia Wa Wata Akal Wa 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 Thathan Gum La Ayasha Aima Waya Akal. The word Awa means something desirable, Hamad something precious, Shakial meaning to give insight, right? So that word Pakwach meaning to open the eyes, as in to be right, to receive, right, a revelation, to have understanding, right, to have your eyes enlightened, right, to have your spiritual eye opened, right, which they call in this world the third eye, which is the scriptures has nothing to do with that, right? That's just talking about, right, having insight. Right, so like the other apostles say, right, we had to learn good, right, and evil, right. Genesis chapter 3 verse 7, right, and the Lord hid all these things up until this very day, right, but now it has been revealed, right, and that this knowledge is filling the earth. Genesis 3 and 7. And it was opened the eyes of both of them, and they knew because they were naked. And they sewed leaves of figs, and they made unto them aprons. Watha pakwachna ayanya shanyaham wayadaiwa kaya ayarama hama wayathaparwa ila ta'ana waya aishawa waya ishwa laham hagarath. Let's look at that word yathapar, Genesis chapter 3 verse 7. Right, so like I said, right, we are we have a righteous spirit, right, but we're in the flesh, right, which we're bound to go off, right. When we have grace, we don't abuse grace, but 2/3 of our people, right, the Israelites, right, which is not talking about the whole world. It's talking about the seed of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, right. They've been seduced, right. Their spirit is corrupted, right. Did the Lord do that? Yes, because He does all things, right. So what happens here on the earth, right, is controlled by this angels in the unseen world, in the spiritual realm, right, which has right, the angels on the left and the right, right. Like I said, there's no actual classification of right, of a devil angel, and right, there's just left and the right, simple as that, right. But these are the spiritual beings that are in the unseen world controlling men, right. So let's look at that word, right, yathapar. Right, so the Lord is pulling all the strings, right. We're not here to, right, make everything seem too deep, confusing, right? It's simple. The Lord controls everything, right? So that word thapar, let's look at that word. To sew together. To sew together, right? Which reminds me of the word rapah, meaning to sew, right? To sew, right? Let's look at that word for heal. You'll find out that some of the Hebrew words are interchanged, right? Ma rapah, healing, refreshing, deliverance, right? Strong's H7495. Rapa'ah, to sew together, to mend, right? So you'll find out, right, that these words have things in common, right? They have cognates, right, which are just in different orders, right? So thapar, right, meaning to sow, right? Ilah meaning leaf, anah meaning it's a fig. Let's look at that word hagar. And that word shatan, I believe it means adversary, but there's another word that's shatah or shatat, right? It means to scourge, right? So it's not really, right, super deep, right, when you think about it. Which is why the scripture said, right, and I'm going to read it later on, that thorns and briars were sent up unto thee, right? Because ultimately Esau was made an adversary. The other nations were made to be an adversary to the chosen seed, right? Through what? The angels in the spiritual realm moving the minds of men in the unseen world, right? So that's how that works, right? So you think you're doing, right, what is your will, right? But really you're, right, the Lord is controlling all things, right? You have a freedom of choice, right? But ultimately what you do has been predetermined, right? So you have the nations, right, coming up against His truth, coming up against, right, our people, right? Even our own people coming up against our own people, right? The Lord is doing that, right? The Lord is making Esau to do what he does, right? Through the angels, right? That's kind of scary when you think about it, you know? It says Hagar, a belt, a girdle, apron, armor, girdle, right? So the eyes of Adam and Eve were open, right? Uh, um, they perceived that what? That that they were naked in the sense that that they had committed sin, right? Because they knew good and evil, right, at this time. So what did they do? They sewed, right, aprons unto them, right? Meaning they attempted to amend their ways, right? But the Lord made them go off. They did not understand that. See, there are certain things that we did not understand in these various times, right? Even until now, right? We don't understand why we do certain things, right? Because we're in the flesh, right? Since Adam went off, right? Mankind has went off, right, with him. But there was a chosen seed that kept the way, right? The Hebrew, right? The oral law, right? Which was established since the foundation of the world, right? Genesis chapter 3 and verse 8. And they heard to the voice of the Lord of powers in the midst of the garden, in the breeze of the day, and he hid himself, Adam and his wife, from before Zalakia, from before the Lord of powers, in the midst of the trees of the garden. Right, so that represents the prophets, right? That we're there in that time as well, right? This represents what being hid in other philosophies, right? Seeking refuge, right? Trying to understand why the Lord did what he did, right? These things were hidden, right? We hid, right? There's 2/3 of our people are even hiding this day from the voice of the Lord, which is the prophets, right? Who says, Why Shemaiwa, Atha Kwal, Yahweh Lahayim, Matha Halak, Bagan, La Racha, Hayawam, Wayatha Chaba, Ha Adam, Wa Ashathwa, Mapanya, Yahweh Alahayim, Bathawa Ka, Aitaza Hagan, right? Let's look at that word, Chaba, Genesis 3 and 8. Right, so the book of Genesis is really, you can't really just jump in and kind of do try to break it down or read it once, try to break it down. You have need to someone teach you first the principles of the oracles of Yahweh Hashem Yahweh Shai, right? Starting with the elders and apostles of Great Millstone, right? So that word Haba'ah, Strong's H2244, right? The root is Kabab, meaning a lap. Haba'ah or Kabah, to hide. To hide oneself, to lie hid. To withdraw, to hide. To hide thyself. Let's just type in to hide. See what else we can get. Strong's H2247. It says to hide oneself, to withdraw, to hide. Right? So Chabah, to withdraw, to hide. Right? Then you have Taman, to bury. Right? Kasad, to cover. Not Nawas, to flee. Sathar, right? To hide, or as in secret. Tazapan, to cover, to overlay. All right, let's look at that word. Sathar. To be hidden, to lie hid. Hide, conceal. Secret, to keep secret. Hide self. Right? So that word haba, right? To withdraw, right? To hide, right? Genesis chapter 3 and verse 9. And he called the Lord of powers to the man, and he said unto him, where are thee? Right? Where art thou? Right? Wayekora Yahweh Alahayim Al Ha Adam Waya Amar Lawa Ayaka. Right? Ayah meaning where, the Ka meaning are thee or thou. Genesis chapter 3 and verse 10. And he said, to the voice I have heard, to your voice I have heard in the garden. And I feared, because was naked I, and I withdrew myself. Waya Amar Atha Kwalka Shamai Thaya Bagan Wa Ayara'a Kaya Ayaram Anakia Wa Achaba'a. Genesis chapter 3 and verse 11. And he said, who has revealed unto thee? Because naked art thou. From the tree which I commanded thee to not eat of it, you have eaten. Waya Amar Maya Ha Gayad Laka Kaya Ayaram Atha Haman Ha Aitaza Ashar Tazawaya Thayaka Labalathia Akal Ma Manawa Akalath. Right? The word Hagayad meaning to reveal. Maya meaning who. Right? Tazawa meaning to command. Tazawaya or Tazawaya Thaya meaning I have commanded. The Ka at the end meaning I have commanded thee. Right? Labal Thaya, the root is bal meaning not. Right? It's another word to say no, la'ah. Genesis chapter 3 and verse 12. And he said, the woman which you have placed, even before I, she gave unto me from the tree, and have eaten. Waya Amar Ha Adam Ha Asha Ashar Natha Aimadia Hawa Nathana Laya Man Ha Ataza Wa Akal. Right? Natha meaning to give. Aimad, right? The root is Aimad meaning to stand. Right? But when you see the ya at the end, right, it's saying even with me, right? Because I'm means with, right? Iwad or ad meaning even, right? So this means even with I, right? Hawa meaning he or she, right? Just like the ya, there are pronouns, right? They, he, she, they. Genesis chapter 3 and 13. And he said, the Lord of powers, to the woman, what is this that you have done? And she said, the woman, the serpent, has beguiled me, and have eaten. Right? Waya Amar Yahweh Alahayim La Asha Mazaath Ashayath Wata Amar Ha Asha Ha Nachash Hashaya Anaya, or Slakia Ha Shaya Anya Wa Akal, right? Because that word Shaya or Shawa means to deceive, right? You read about that in the law. Thou shalt not lift up the Lord, the name of the Lord, to deceive, right? And that's what you have other camps doing, right? They're calling upon Yahweh Bashim Yahushai in the presence of men, but they're not giving you the whole understanding, right? They're going to be destroyed for that. Genesis chapter 3 and 14. And he said, the Lord of powers unto the serpent, because you have done this, cursed art thou from all the beasts and from all living things of the field, right? Upon your belly thou shalt go, and dust thou shalt eat all the days of your life. Waya Amar Yahweh Alahayim Al Cha Nachash Kaya Shayath Za'ath Arar Atha Makal Ha Bahama Wa Makal Chayath Ha Shada Al Gachanka Talak Wa Ipar Tha Akal Kal Yamaya Haya Yaka. The word arar meaning to curse, right? You have gachan meaning belly, ipar meaning dust, right? Dirt. Right? Which is this is the proto Edomites, the proto Cain, which is a serpent, which is the wicked, right? Because Esau is blessed with what? The sword, right? He's blessed because he was given, right, technology, right? But he's cursed in the sense that, right, the Lord cursed his ways, right? Certain health, right? He has no melanin, right? And there's other things that he was cursed by, right? By the Lord, right? Tilling the earth, right? Which is why he uses all kinds of GMOs and, science, right? To produce what he produces, right? So overall, right, the Lord made the serpent, right, vile, right, to crawl in the dust, right, to eat dirt all the days of your life, right? So Esau doesn't give a damn about the laws, right? He'll eat whatever, right? He's in the dust, right? Like the serpent, because dust represents confusion, right? Also being in the lowest state, right? But here it represents confusion, right? He prospers in pushing various philosophies, right? That were that existed throughout time, right? This is how he heaps up all people into himself through philosophies, right? Confusion, right? Being vile. Genesis chapter 3 and 15. And enmity I will place between thee and between the woman, and between your seed and between her seed. Um, and she will cast down unto you your head, or Salakia, and he will cast down to thee your head, and she will cast you down in the end. Wa ayaba ashayath bayanka wa bayan ha'asha wa bayan zaraika wa bayan zaraya hawa yashabka ra'ash wa atha tashawab nawa ikwab. Right? Because it says they will cast down, right, your head, right, and and you will strike at their heel, right? But that's not necessarily what it's talking about, right? Right. So that just represents the enmity, right, that the seed, right, of the wicked will have with the woman, which represents the nation of Israel, right? The seed of the serpent represents Esau, the so-called white man, right? That enmity that has always existed throughout time, right? Which is so it actually reads, they shall cast down your head, and you will cast down their heel, right? Which is what happened, right, when Esau and Jacob were born, right? Esau came out first, and Jacob held onto his heel, right? Scriptures say that what Esau is the end of the world, and Jacob is the beginning of it that followeth, right? So this is kind of this precept is like a double entendre, right? It has a double meaning, right? Because there's a reason why Esau came out, right, to grab Esau's heel, right, to push wickedness in the earth. And then Jacob, right, to hold on his heel, right? But like it says here, you will cast down your head, and thou shalt cast down his heel, right? Because there's a certain time, right, when Esau was subdued, right? Revelation chapter 20, right? The Dark Ages, right? And then Esau rose into power, right? And we lost our heritage, right? But the end of all things, right, is at hand, right? As you see the things that were written, right, which are coming to pass, right? And the day is hastening, right, even as we speak. Which is why in Second Ezra chapter 6, right, the angel did not reveal that meaning unto Ezra, because it wasn't given unto him. He said, ask me other things, but this ask thou not unto me, right? Genesis chapter 3 and 16. To the woman he said, surely I will multiply your travail, right? And you will scream and travail and bringing forth in your travails, in the travailing of your sons. Al Ha'asha Amar Ha Rabah A Rabah Itazab Naka Waha Ranka Ba Itazab Daladia Banyam, and to your husband you shall desire, and he will rule upon thee. Wa'al Ayashka Da Shawak Thaka Wa Hawa Yamashal Baka. The word Shawak, it just means the legs, as in, right, not desiring your husband. That just means that you will run after your husband, as in you will, right, the woman, right, will be dependent onto the man for what? Protection, for bearing children, right, for a family, right? So that's right, because in the ancient days, right, it was different. Not like today. Women are freely able to roam, right? Everything is safe for the most part. But back then, right, you had to have a husband, a man, right, to keep you from being taken or popped, or right. Things were more savage in those days, right? So that's just what it means, right? That the woman would be follow after her husband, right? So let's look at that word uh, run. Genesis chapter 3 and verse 16. I believe the root is Rawan or Rana. Salakia. Let's get that real quick. Or Salakia, that means to conceive. That's my mistake. It's the root is hara, meaning to conceive. Right? But that's what travail means, itazab, right? Because that is the curse of the woman, right? You gotta right bear a child 9 months, and then you know you have some women that die bringing forth children, right? Sometimes you gotta have a C-section, right? Right? Why? Because right, uh, um, because of the sin of Adam, right? So not everything is too deep. It's not, oh, okay, the travail is the times within the times, and right, you divide that by two, right? That's not what it's talking about. Genesis chapter 3 and verse 17, right? Salakia. Bear with me. Genesis chapter 3 and 17. And to Adam he said, because you have heard of the voice of your wife, thou shalt eat, and you have eaten from the tree which I commanded thee to say, thou shalt not eat of it. Cursed will be the ground for your sake, and in travail thou shalt eat of it all the days of your life. Wala Adam Amar Kaya Shamaitha Laqual Ashatka Wata Akal Manha Aitaza Ashar Tazawayathayaka La Amar La'a Tha Akal Ma Manawa Ara Ha Adama Ba Ibarka Ba Itazabwan Tha Akalna Kal Yamaya Khaya Yaka. Right, so like I said, you had the other trees in the field, in the garden. You had the serpent. You had the fruits, represents the philosophies that these other nations had. Right, you had the wicked. Right, and you had the righteous in the garden. Right. So now, right, Adam, right, was not going off, but he was made to go off. Right. So we went off throughout time, but now, right, the remnant are not going to go off in the sense that we're in the flesh, we're going to go off, but we're going to hold fast to the ways of Yahweh Shem Yahushai and ultimately get delivered, right? So that is a curse of Adam, right? Ground being cursed, right? Hard labor, right? Because in the garden, right, Adam he was perfect, right? He did what the Lord commanded him to do, right? So he was in favor, right? But since, right, there was that casting away, right? Then right, the chosen seed was made to go off, right? They were cast out of that garden, out of that fruitful place where they had, right, the excellency, right? So they lost their excellency. They were cast away. That reminds me of Israel being cast away, right? Not losing, not knowing their heritage. They're losing the customs, right? And so on and so forth. Genesis 3 and 18, right? And thorns and thistles will spring up unto thee, and thou shalt eat the grass of the field, right? So in the garden, right, the chosen seed, Adam, right, and his wife, right, were in that high estate, right? They were given status, right? But they were cast out of the garden, right? And thorns and thistles, right? This is actual thorns and thistles, right? But you had, right, because Adam and his wife were cast away from that high estate, right? It's talking about, right, other nations as well that would eventually sprout up, right? Wickedness will be multiplied. The true way, right, would not be kept. So, like in the following chapters, right, wickedness being multiplied upon the earth, right? The Lord made these other nations, right, to afflict us, right? But this is actually talking about thorns and thistles, right? But the scriptures say that as well, right? The Lord made some of these other nations, right, to test, right, to become briars, as like it says in the law, as briars, and said about the Canaanites as briars and thorns in your eyes, right? Genesis chapter 3, verse 19. Upon the sweat of your brow, right, which really that says nose, apyaka, thou shalt eat bread, even till you return unto the ground, because from it you were taken, because dust you are, and dust to dust you shall return. Bazayath apyaka tha'akol laham ad shawabka al ha'adama kaya mamanawa lakwath kaya ipar atha wa'al ipar tha shawab. Genesis chapter 3, verse 20, right? So it's not always super deep, The Lord just said, from dust you were made, from dust thou shalt return, right? Genesis 3 and 20. And he called the man, the name of his wife, Eve, because she was the mother of all living, right? Waya Kwara'a, Ha Adam, Sham, Ashathwa, Hawa, Kaya, Hawa, Hayatha, Ama, Kal, Chaya. Genesis chapter 3 and 21. And he made the Lord of powers unto man, to his wife, tunics of skin, and he clothed them, right? Waya Aisha Yahweh Alahayim La Adam Wala Ashathwa Kathanath Iwar Waya Labasham, right? Labash meaning to clothe. Kathanath meaning tunics, right? It is essentially talking about the Lord, right, continuing that law, right, that the ways of righteousness, right, which was given unto the chosen seed, right, for them to continue, right, performing it, right. But this time they had what? The knowledge of good and evil, right? Because before they ate these other philosophies, the tree of knowledge of good and evil, right, they were perfect. They had the righteous way, right? But now they ate the knowledge of good and evil, right? They were given, right, a way to follow that is good, right? And they were given the knowledge of that which is not good, but they still went off, right? Because they were cast down from their excellency. Genesis chapter 3 and 22. And he said, the Lord of powers, behold, the man is like one of us, to know good and evil. And now, lest he send his hand out to take even of the tree of life and eat and live forever, right? So the Lord didn't let Adam, right, take of the tree of life, right, which is to have the whole understanding, right? So Adam didn't know, okay, this I'm going off now, okay, why is this happening, and so on and so forth, right? Why did we lose our excellency, right? What is going to happen in the end, right? That is the knowledge of the tree of life, right? Salakia. Genesis chapter 3 and 22. Waya Amar Yahweh Elohim Chana Ha-Adam Chaya Ka-Echad Ma Manawa La Dayath Tawab Wa Raya Wa Aitha Pan Yashalach Yadwa Wa Lakwach Gum Ma Aitaza Cha Chayayam Wa Akol Wa Chaya La Ilam. Right? Genesis chapter 3 and 23. And he sent them out, the Lord of powers, from the Garden of Eden to till to the ground, which he took them from hence. Vayishalachwa Yahweh Elohim Magan Aidan La Ibad Atha Ha Adama Ashar Lakwach Masham. Genesis chapter 3 and 24. And he drove them out to the man, and they dwelt in the east of the Garden of Eden, and two cherubs, and two a flaming sword, he put round about to keep to the way of the tree of life. Right? Waya Garash Atha Ha Adam Waya Shakan Ma Kwadam Lagan Aidan Atha Ha Karabium Wa Atha Lachat Ha Karab Ha Matha Hapaktha, right? Hakapath, Salakia. Ha Matha Hakapath. La Shamar Atha Darak Aitaza Ha Chayayam, right? Shakan meaning to dwell, right? Gan meaning garden. Eden, right? That is the name of a place. Karabia meaning cherubs. Lachat meaning flame, right? Karab sword. Kapak, right? Meaning to overturn something, right? In this sense, right? A flaming sword that turned round about to keep to the way of the tree of life. Right, so that knowledge was always there, right? The right, the full knowledge, the full understanding, right? But the Lord cast away the excellency of Adam and Eve, put that flaming sword round about, right? As in the knowledge was hidden, right? Of the Lord's his full counsel, right? So you had these other nations, right, in the garden. You had the serpent in the garden, right? But that knowledge was protected, right? Just like the scriptures was protected, right? The precepts, the proverbs, the parables, right? So the Lord said, okay, look, you have these other philosophies, right? You eat of these trees, right? But don't eat the knowledge of good and evil, meaning, right? Don't follow after their ways, right? Right? Don't do what they do, right? Which is, right, that's kind of deep because Yahushua said, right, um, about the Pharisees, which taught the law but were teaching hypocrisies. He said, right, do as they say, but not as they do, according to their works, right? Which I'm not comparing it to this here, right? But it's in the sense that the Lord told Adam and Eve, look, okay, I made you perfect. You're walking perfect, right? These are the other philosophies, right? Just don't do what they're doing, right? But they were enticed, right, by the knowledge of good and evil, right? And that the Lord put that spirit in them, right? So he made Adam and Eve go off. Simple as that, right? So with that is Genesis chapter 3, going into the Hebrew. His brother Yatazadak Hero Israel. And as always, giving honor and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Kakwadash. Double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone. Kwam Yasha Allah, about a ball, and Shalom.